Hi everyone, Mature Simmer here. So just got the server synced up to near real time. Still going to be dark, getting a good early start this morning because I anticipated we would have a lot of work ahead of us. And we do. It's 70 degrees. So our plan for cotton, we finally crossed the threshold. So it is time to start doing that work. So let me head on over. I spent some time last night staging things around field 8. So I have my tractor with the seeder here, and then I have 2 truck trailers, and then obviously my Mack that will move them around. So I've got my seeder, which is what we're attached to there, and then I have my tanker. The reason I have my tanker is if I head on over to the quad track here, I go ahead, turn on my flashlight so you can see some things. Whoops. And you'll notice we have a different configuration of our planter. I was able to take this into the shop and determine that, contrary to what I thought, I can get fertilizer on this planter. However, it is liquid fertilizer, so we have our tanker with liquid fert. I have no idea how much I'm going to need. I have also gone ahead and installed a liquid fert silo onto my grounds at 97, which we may or may not see at this point. Obviously, if I run out of space in the tanker, or at the end of the day, if I have anything left, I'm going to go put it there. The other thing that I did determine that was new to me and new to some of the other FMs that I shared it with is, if you had watched my starting equipment video way back at the start of the series, I mentioned the FSN trailers and the labeling and that they're informational only. Turns out that's actually incorrect. Depending on how you have the trailer labeled, that's what you can put into it. So because I had it labeled as herbicide, I kept trying to put liquid fertilizer into it and determined, until I changed the logo on the side of the tanker and repurposed it, I could not fill it that way. There's also not a way, even by putting the FSN logo onto the tanker, to be able to simply use the tanker for any kind of liquid. At that point, I could not load it with at least any of those 2 things from the silo, either herbicide or liquid fertilizer. So I went ahead and made the change, because in the shop you can relabel the tanker without any cost. So that is where we are at this morning. And we're going to go ahead, jump in here, fire her up, and we're all connected. You can see we're full of liquid fert. We have some less seeds in this configuration. So there's a couple configurations I can do with tanks, just not with 2 tanks. So I could do 1 tank of liquid fert and still continue to have that additional hopper for seeds, what they call the refuge tank. And that would give me basically another, not quite 500, because I think it was 44, or not quite 1,000, I guess. Because it was 4404 would be my seeds instead of 3524. So I'm going to see what this looks like right now and just get this going. And as I learn things, I may choose to reconfigure now. I may choose to reconfigure after I'm fully done with planting. Just live with what I have now for this job as I plant these 4 fields. Or I may decide, hey, that this actually works well, that the fert and the cotton are consumed at a level that works. So, enough talking, time to get working. There's nobody else better than me around. So I've gone ahead and done the headland, and now I'm obviously beginning with the north-south rows here. I've never worked these fields since they're not mine, so I have no idea how much supply is going to be consumed here. So we'll all learn together. At this point, I know, as I've done before in the dark, I'll just go ahead and keep working, and as the sun starts to come up and I've had some time to think about the situation and observe what's happening, I'll probably have something more useful to share. So I'll talk to you at that point.
You know I'm the type to stand out in a crowd. You might be jealous, but I can't help it now. I'm like a diamond, can't stop me from shining bright. People stop and stare when I am in the sight. I look expensive, yeah, they all want this life. So here I am, look everyone, watch out for me, I'll be the one you want. I'll blow your mind, take you away.
So I'm going to go ahead and pop in here as I'm getting close to having to refill the seeds. So you can see the trucks starting to appear there out of the morning haze. So that's the edge of the field, so we're getting there. Across the way, Sears has used a couple of his fields to plant poppies, so they're at the stage now where we can start to see the bulbs, so that's pretty nice. And it looks like he's used some of the space in the woods there to put some supply silos in, so that is also interesting. I've not been up here before. It looks like his regular silo might actually be there as well. I don't want to go too far and run out of seeds. There we go. Alright, so let me switch over to the seeds, which I thought I'd need first. Also not sure. Oops. I don't know that it'll give me enough light. Okay. I was saying I'm not sure that it will have me connected up, and it did not. So it's starting to look, as far as the configuration, that I certainly could have gone with one tank and expanded the seeds. I'm not sure that it's going to ultimately be that difficult or that beneficial, because it's not as if I can drive this tractor. It's got a 24 mile per hour maximum speed. So driving it back down to my workshop, even though I'm on the correct side of the map, from an east-west standpoint, is still going to take some time. So I'm just not sure that it's worth worrying about now, but I will probably change this to a different configuration in the future, just so that I don't have to fill the seeds as often. Just shut the truck off so I'm not wasting fuel that I don't need to be wasting. But, you know, we're starting to get a nice view of the poppies as the sun's starting to come up. But we're still a ways away from a good amount of daylight here. But yeah, we've only used a quarter of the tank of fertilizer, so in theory I can, at this point, refill this seeder 2 more times, so 3 times in total. You know, but 4 loads of seed for 1 full load of fertilizer, which is good because fertilizer is pretty expensive regardless of the format. I did also discover that liquid fert is less expensive than solid fert. The thing I don't know is, you know, application-wise, to get the same bang for the liter, if they are similar in potency. But we'll be able to tell a little bit by the cost, if it's significantly different. Now, once again, the crop type is determining how much I need, as is the field and the state it was in and so forth. So I had asked Sears as I was deciding to lease these fields, just so I kind of had a general idea of what I was getting into. He had oats on all these fields before. That's his typical rotation, and that's what happened to be on here. So it's similar to what I would see. It's just this is going to be the first year on my farm that I'll have planted oats, and then we'll plant cotton afterwards. So I'll really have a comparison next year when I replant field 86 and 85. If I do that in cotton, I may choose next year to do hemp and wait for cotton the following year. But at some point when I plant cotton on those fields, I'll have some more relevant data to compare this to. So it's going to take some time, just as it does in real farming, to get enough data to start to gain some information and turn that into knowledge of what the situation really is. So, and yeah, you probably noticed in the time lapse, well, this is the first time I've gotten stuck on a tree, but I was going to say, you probably noticed in the time lapse I've had to kind of pull up and then reposition. Oh, I thought it was going to free itself, but so but yeah, I at one point had to redo the. Alright, at this point I think I'm going to fold this before I get myself in a position that I'm really going to be in trouble. As it is, this may get ugly, but let's see. I'm hoping it'll just pop loose. There we go. But, I've had to reposition because I wasn't quite lined up with the field, etc. And I obviously don't want to miss things. I want to maximize every inch of the crop that I can. I'm going to turn off my line to back up so I can position a little more. Will unfold as we go ahead and get back here, and then I think we'll be good at this point. Just try to straighten the tractor out a bit, turn my line back on, head back forward. Alright, I think this planter takes a little while to unfold before we can lower it and so forth. So, alright, good to go. Continuing to plant our cotton. So, yeah, just from a timing standpoint, not just having to refill a little bit less, because obviously we would have had another 1,000 or so, or 900 liters of seeds in there with the other configuration. Now we also obviously would have had less liquid fertilizer. We would have had half, so. But, so we'd likely be sitting at 50% of fertilizer instead of 75, and had run longer. So, I mean, the configuration's not perfect either way, but it would be a little bit closer where I'd be refilling both together. And on the one hand, this may actually be a better situation because I can just keep the truck connected to a specific tender longer, where it makes little sense for me to buy another Mac, for example, just to have the ability to not have to disconnect and change trailers. It's an awfully expensive piece of laziness if I can't disconnect some hoses and reconnect the tractor to the trailer periodically. But if I get the liquid fertilizer and the seeds closer together, I would have to do that more frequently. So I might truly need to spend some time thinking on it, and I'll do that while I'm working the fields. And I'll certainly have at least more of an opinion at some point later on. But we'll head back into some more time lapse, and I'll talk to you next time I have something to say.
You know I'm the type to stand out in a crowd. You might be jealous, but I can't help it now. I'm like a diamond, can't stop me from shining bright. People stop and stare when I am in the sight. I look expensive, yeah, they all want this life.
So just finished up on 8. As you can see, it didn't really take that incredibly long. I mean, I've been on for nearly an hour, and you know, that included getting up here, getting going, so forth. It also just naturally takes a little bit longer in the dark because it's harder to see. You want to make sure you don't fall in the river, things like that, so you're moving around a little slower than you may during the daytime. But this will go relatively quickly. In the interim, I've asked Swede, who started his rye harvest, if he wants some help, because frankly I think I may need some of his help later to get this cotton off the field. So certainly want to reciprocate and help each other out, but I'm waiting for his reply. But I may end up popping over and helping him out, because at this point it looks like I should be able to get these fields done in a reasonable amount of time. And there's not really a reason then to not help him out. I'm just trying to figure out if I want to. It's probably best just to start over on 102 and go ahead and head over to the west. I was going to maybe do 105 and then go the other way, kind of start at this, split and break it off, but I don't know that that makes a lot of sense. So, and I think the river's close enough and steep enough that I'm going to run an outside headland on this to begin with. And I have to lower it as well. So I turned it on, but didn't lower it. So obviously I transported it from one field to the other. Wasn't really thinking that through. But now at least if I do this, I'll give myself more space to turn. And that's what seems to make sense at this point. Again, it's fields I'm less familiar with, but yeah, this hill here is pretty steep. I'm going to be able to shave off most of the downhill side as far as having to have the implement in the ground. So that should make it easier for the tractor to come back uphill, because I won't have to put the planter down until I'm nearly at the apex. So yeah, I'm liking the decision I made. So let's see, do we want to reposition this a little bit? Probably, because I'm going off the edge of the field and this looks a little bit, that's still not quite there. So I'm just trying to figure out what makes sense here. It might need to be that far over. And I think I just clear the trees here, and I think any bump in the field, because it does continue to drift over, and this might not work entirely, but I'm optimistic it will. Yeah, I think it'll look like I know what I'm doing. Look at that. So So yeah, I'm liking the decision I made here, because especially up here too, like there's literally no room to turn around off the field, and so running this will change the dynamics certainly quite a bit of the angle of attack I need to take here and give me at least a fighting chance to turn around. I may still have to reverse here and there. So these pieces where, you know, the field looks like it wasn't limed, it's one of the things I've noticed with precision farming is it obviously controls your spreaders and so forth. So according to the map, it's fully limed. It just chose to not do that. So there, you know, were other points where I'm sure you've seen the, go get the seed tender. Yeah, Swede's not moving, so he may be away from his keyboard. He had asked me earlier what my plan was for the day, and I hadn't seen the message pop up. I don't know if it was because I had my HUD turned off at the time or what it was, but let me fold this up so I don't catch it on a telephone pole or something as I'm going down the road. Plus it's just the right thing to do from an immersive realism standpoint. You don't normally drive a seed tender down the road with the arm extended. But yeah, so yeah, it's covered with precision farming as far as the field being done, but you may have noticed in the time lapse on 8 that there were some segments too that, including right where I started, I believe, that didn't look like it was limed. You'll certainly have probably caught it in the thumbnail where it looks like I'm parked on a space in the field that I didn't lime, but according to precision farming it was all covered. So it just happened to turn off the spreader there and visually doesn't look like it is, but it's telling me in the map that it is, and try as I might to go over those kind of spaces, it turns off the spreader and won't change it. So yeah, the plan here will be the same as it was obviously with the other fields, and as it will be with fields year after year after year. Farming is nothing if not repetitive. But once I get this planted, tomorrow we'll be on these fields putting in weed killer. Wasn't sure if I was going to end up down the hill too much. That actually isn't even a river. It's almost like a path in the woods. That's interesting. I didn't realize that. On the other end, it certainly is a river, but so yeah, and we're still not at 50% of the fertilizer, so oops, because I stopped entirely, it turns off the sower. I don't remember if it raises it. No, it does not, but okay, so we should be good now. There we go. So so yeah, that's the situation here. So it may be that, am I going to catch that? I think I did. I would have turned earlier, except I was worried I was going to miss it. And I didn't hit the tree, so it worked out okay. I was thinking it was just going to turn into a disaster again, but it did not. So, small blessings. Always thankful for them. So, like, there's another piece there where I definitely, you know, was careful to make sure I hit everything, but sometimes it doesn't visually look like I did. But it's possible I missed that piece. I don't remember, but the other one I think I tried to rerun and it just would not change spraying there. or spreading the lime there. But no, you can obviously see that after he had harvested up here, we've had a good amount of weed growth on these fields, which is typical, because if you recall, weeds are in essence planted between. Let me go ahead and stop at this point and head back and work on the edge of the field, because now I've done my outer headland. Weeds are planted both at harvest time and at seeding, and so it does appear that kind of sharing information between all of us and the School of Hard Knocks and so forth, that once we get the first stage of growth in after planting, if we apply herbicide then, that appears to be the best time to only have to do one application. So that is what I believe all of us have adopted at this point in how we treat weeds. So it's certainly normal to see fields like this that have been harvested and that haven't been worked yet to look pretty ravaged by weeds. And once again, they'll certainly come up again. We'll see them again as we're doing the weed control tomorrow on these fields, but I would assume they won't be this bad because they haven't had months and months to grow. They'll just have had 1 month to basically sprout up by the time we're back here tomorrow. So with that, I'll continue working, and I'll talk to you at the next time I've got something to say.
I'm like a diamond, can't stop me from shining bright. People stop and stare when I am in the sight. I look expensive, yeah, they all want this life. So here I am, look everyone, watch out for me, I'll be the one you want. I'll blow your mind, take you away. You know that there is no way I would change. Oh, everybody looks at me wherever I go. They all know that I love the attention and taking control. Watch out for me now, you know I'm ready now. I'm hot as fire, take things higher, yeah, I shut it down. Oh, everybody looks at me wherever I go. All eyes on me. All eyes on me. Look out for me, watch out for me. All eyes on me. All eyes on me. All eyes on me.
So getting close to empty in both hoppers here. I'll, obviously fill whichever one goes empty first. If I'm lucky, they'll both go empty together, but I think it'll be, and at that point, if it's really, really close, which I guess it's going to be, I'll just, go ahead and fill both and just not have to stop again in 5 seconds. So the other FM and I that is on right now have kind of been chatting. So he's decided, because he's got a lot of time, he doesn't need any help in harvesting. So I'm just gonna continue plowing forth here. We've been spending the last few minutes kind of debating the merits of FS22, as in general, at least our group here continues to not be incredibly drawn to FS22 right now in the state it's in. which just still begs the question of should Giants as a publisher and a creator really kind of take that kind of feedback to heart from those of us who really love Farming Simulator and do things like this where we spend, as I did the other day, 12 hours in here with the game because I can play it in multiplayer in real time and it feels worth it, but I honestly think I would go insane trying to play FS22 for 12 hours straight right now. And that's kind of been a bit of the discussion because he's in essence got all day off, and I had offered to help him with the harvest so that he could get to FS22, and because he hasn't tried it out yet. And at this point we're sitting here on December 3rd, and FS22 came out on November 22nd, so however many actual days that is, but it's, coming up on almost 2 weeks or so I think it's, 11, 12 days since it came out, and he's not had a chance to look at it. And based on what he's seen and heard, I mean, he popped in for a few minutes one day, so it's not that he hasn't looked at it at all, but he's having a similar type impression where it's just not compelling enough. He's like, no, I'd rather stay in here and relax in the harvester, and rather than get done here quickly so he can go explore FS22. So it just seems very much like something that would be a substantial concern. I know if I was running Giants and people were giving me that kind of feedback, to me that's significant. I think you run the risk, and kind of what I had shared in my review that you can see on the channel really has not changed, and my endpoint is still as relevant now as ever. If you continue to require people to fall in love with your game over again from the beginning each time, eventually it just becomes too difficult to do that over and over again, and you're going to have people walking away, is my feeling. And that just comes from my personal experience talking to others. I hear a lot of that in the discussion, is like it becomes like, my role in the software industry, where eventually you kind of get to the point in your career where you're like, I'm not going to learn all new technology that just changed out again for the 7th time. I'm kind of done picking things up, and Giants puts themselves in that position every time they release a new game, where are people going to linger long enough to wait for mods to get re-released? Are they going to wait for balancing issues to get resolved and bugs to get resolved? Where it just seems to me there's another way, because I've seen it in other games where you don't need to release a new version to keep the game vibrant, exciting, and going. I'll obviously in transparency and so forth. I mean, I've talked about how I'd probably certainly be considered a newbie to not just FS19 but Farming Simulator, and that I don't even have a year in the game yet. So in the Farming Simulator franchise, or FS19. But I can legitimately say at this point that turn off the truck again. There's not a thought in my mind at this point that if FS22 didn't exist, that I wouldn't just sit here happy as a clam, continuing doing what I'm doing with FS19, and do that for years to come. So that's kind of where my head's at and where I come from. Is it becomes a question of why bother coming out with a new game. Like, the current one is incredible and awesome and thoroughly enjoyable. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to rehash my review, but that's not the point of what to do here. But it's just, as we sit here and farm and move around, we have a lot of time to think, just like, you know, real farmers do out in the field. And that happens to be what came up in conversation today as we've been chatting with each other. So figured I'd share as I'm going ahead and getting myself repositioned here and continuing with the fields. So I'm refilled, finally filled the fertilizer again for the first time since I started. So I will say I've gotten incredibly high usage out of the fertilizer compared to what I was likely expecting. I haven't used a lot of liquid fertilizer in the game, partly because I've heard from a lot of people that you use a lot more of it. So some of that was what was driving my expectation, that I just assumed I'd be flying through fertilizer, and I had worried initially, like, will that tanker get me through, or will I need to go get more? And that was partially why I said, well, we'll add the silo, because if I'm going through tens of thousands of liters of it, as I was with my lime, which I know would be unlikely to be that volume. Lime is just definitely a high consumption item. But, you know, what would I need to make it functional? And at this point, between the seeds and the tanker, I'm not going to need to refill either of them before I'm done with these fields, which is terrific. So the good news is then my supply costs will probably not be as exorbitantly high as I was expecting. But we'll see where we end up once we're done here, and I've got the herbicide down and so forth. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. You're also probably noticing I'm going across the fields right now, because as I cut across to do the headlands at the bottom, I looked at it and was like, well, this is honestly almost no different than what I'm dealing with at 97. And while it's another field across the road, where for me at 97, it's the same field, just split with a driveway, and I certainly have gone across that and worked it that way. But because the field is much longer north-south than it is east-west, I run the lines that way. Not because I don't want to cross the driveway, but that's because it makes sense on how to work the field. And similarly, as I got here and realized, all right, 101 is right ahead of me, and it just makes sense to continue, that's what I went ahead and did. So I'm going to probably just do maybe one more pass, maybe another. I'm going to have to go around that tree at some point. We'll see how that all lines up. But I can get a pass or two, and then I'll probably just finish up 101 and then go ahead and complete with 102. So that's what I've got for now. Not sure that I'll have much to say before the end. If I do, obviously I'll pop back in and share my thoughts. But that's where we're at, and I would think another hour, hour and a half of work here, and I may be done.
You know I'm the type to stand out in a crowd. You might be jealous, but I can't help it now. I'm like a diamond, can't stop me from shining bright. People stop and stare when I am in the sight.
So I'm back here. You'll notice it's about 9 o'clock. I had popped over and helped out on Wild Moose Farms with some work he needed done this morning so that he could stay ahead of things. I won't spoil what was going on there. You'll see it in the episode tomorrow. And just going to go ahead and continue finishing my planting, which I'm imagining, again, shouldn't take me that incredibly long. And I'll talk to you in a bit.
There's nobody else better than me around. You know I'm the type to stand out in a crowd. You might be jealous, but I can't help it now. I'm like a diamond, can't stop me from shining bright. People stop and stare when I am in the sight. I look expensive, yeah, they all want this life. So here I am, look everyone, watch out for me, I'll be the one you want. I'll blow your mind, take you away. You know that there is no way I would change. Oh, everybody looks at me wherever I go. They all know that I love the attention and I'm taking control. Watch out for me now, you know I'm ready now. I'm hot as fire, take things higher, yeah, I shut it down. Oh, everybody looks at me wherever I go. All eyes on me. All eyes on me. Look out for me, watch out for me. All eyes on me.
So I'm on the last pass here of, I believe it's field 105. And then we will be done with our cotton. So, as I mentioned, perhaps another hour, hour and a half. I ended up having a interruption in the center, or in the middle, since I was on last time with you when I restarted this after helping out the other FM. So it hasn't taken me an hour and a half. It's probably been much closer to an hour to get done. But at this point, we're complete. I'm going to end up doing my normal cleanup, which I'm not going to attach to the video here. Not really something that I'm assuming most people want to watch. And then we will likely be back here. Well, I know we'll be back tomorrow. It's just a question of deciding what will be done, and more than likely we'll be doing spraying on these fields for weeds, and that will be the key work for tomorrow. So at this point, yeah, definitely happy that I went ahead and reconfigured the planter. It makes things a lot simpler. I don't have to now rerun these fields with fertilizer, which is what I thought I was going to need to be doing before I discovered when I took my planter to the workshop that I did have an option to begin seeding, or to be fertilized while I'm seeding. So that was great. And expanded some capability on the farm, learned some things about FSN regarding trailer marking, or tanker marking, that only allows that certain fill type based on what you place on the trailer. So that is piece of information I did not know about the FSN setup, which is great to know. And that gets us where we need, but it was actually a much shorter day on the farm than I was anticipating as I was going forward. Now, I don't have any illusions about harvesting not being lengthy and challenging. It's just the reality of, I've done cotton harvesting. I've done it recently on this map. I understand we have a small working with and a slow machine that also then needs to be manually stopped and unloaded each time it fills. So it's just like manually baling. So all of that adds up to a less than simple and quick set of activities. So knew what I was signing up for the challenge, and I will share that journey with you as we go forward and bear the fruits of the labor that I put in here. And as I said, I'm pretty sure that will easily be the largest profit year on the farm so far, just from a raw profit standpoint even. So we will see how that goes over the next few episodes as I continue moving through summer into autumn and we get things done. Now, there is a bit of a concern because I did look at the calendar, and Wednesday, Thursday, which are looking temperature-wise to be probably the last days of autumn, both have significant amounts of rain, which is concerning because there is a possibility that I lose crop on the field because I can't harvest it. So I'm going to pray that that isn't what happens, because that would then obviously impact our profitability and would be pretty disappointing for going through all this effort to then not be able to bear the fruit of the labor of what I've put into it. So I will finish cleaning up, and I will talk to you next time.